Thank you for joining us today. I'd like to welcome everyone to today's webinar, Protect F5 Web Applications from Malicious and Negligent Users. As organizations move to the cloud, thousands or millions of documents are now being shared among collaborators on a daily basis, a single organization. Web servers that allow file uploads are prime targets for malware attacks on the client and the server side, exposing the organization to file-borne risks, including seemingly innocent productivity files. So how can you safeguard web applications from the human element without compromising performance? Well, in this webinar, we'll review how ICAP technologies can be used to reduce threats, both known and unknown threats, to remove malicious and sensitive information and file uploads to corporate networks. And we'll also review how these technologies can be easily integrated into existing F5 solutions, which host or load balance web applications. We'll also discuss how OPSWAT's MetaDefender ICAP server, an advanced cybersecurity solution for preventing zero-day exploits, can easily be added to F5 big IP appliances. So let's go ahead and get started. So at this time, I'd like to introduce our co-presenters, John Wagnon, Solutions Architect of F5 Networks, and Laura Arciniagas, Product Marketing Manager at OPSWAT. I'll hand this over to Laura.
Hello, everyone. I'm Laura, and I'm very happy that everyone's here right now. I know it's a little bit early for us in the West Coast, but thank you for your participation. Now, we're here to talk about a topic that is very dear to both F5 and OPSWAT, and that is web application security.
That's right, Laura. So in this case, we're going to be talking about two types of users that can cause different types of harm. And everyone knows that malicious users, are harmful. And what malicious users are people that are trying to do something bad to your web application. So we won't necessarily explain those. But negligent users are a little bit different. These are people who use the web application. They're not being careful about guidelines and rules, those types of things. They could be uploading things like personally identifiable information, PII, like social security numbers, credit cards, emails, all that kind of stuff. And they could cause a different set of issues for security architects.
So here's a little bit of here's a little information regarding me and John, our presenters today. Okay, so we have short 30 minutes to get this presentation to you guys, and so we're gonna go over three things that we can do to safeguard the web application from malicious and negligent users. So we'll talk about Metascan, we'll talk about Deep CDR, and we'll talk about proactive DLP.
All right, so yeah, I want to clear up that it talks about scalability, and it says F5 integration and scalability, but really both products have the ability to scale up and speak to each other. So there's a good connection between F5 products and OPSWAT products.
Yeah, good point, John. Okay, and finally, we'll do a quick demo for you guys, and we'll have some time for some questions. Okay, so is everyone in the room aware that we're in a digital revolution? Well, good, because the signs are all around us.
That's right, Laura. So Bitcoin is a digital currency, and things like eBay are digital commerce, digital e-commerce, right?
And things like Match.com are digital dating.
Wow, digital dating. What a crazy world we live in, right, Laura?
Right.
It's hey, and I tell you what, if you've had a chance to read F5's 2020 State of Application Services report, you would have known, or you would find out that 80% of corporations and companies are engaged in a thing that we like to call digital transformation. In order to increase velocity of new products, service introductions, they want to speed these things up.
Well, it's very interesting. I did not know that.
Yeah. So back in the day, one of the quickest transitions of digitalization, that's a big word. Do you know what that might be, Laura?
I have no idea.
All righty. So back in the early days of like the 1980s and technology, that's like a lifetime ago, right? This is back in like Windows 1.0, like early Windows time. Every corporation was ready to put down their pens and pencils and paper and start typing on a keyboard. And so documents became digital. and then they could be sent over the internet very quickly in a matter of seconds, minutes or seconds. So it's a very fast thing. So that transformed the way that the business is done.
Okay, well, I guess, yeah, that Windows 1.0 really must have changed humans' collaboration forever. Well, did you know that Cisco predicts that the global IP traffic will be approximately 150 terabytes every second? I mean, what does this mean for hosts that are trying to host web applications?
Wow, 152 terabytes every second. That's a ton of data. So yeah, Cisco does great work, and we, F5 in fact partners with Cisco. So that's a lot of data to consider for sure.
Right. And so I guess that means that your F5 LTM, it better be prepared to take on the load. And it means that there's going to be tons of information that are going to be sent into your website from anonymous sources. And of course, you can't reject any of this valuable information, but should you really welcome every single document, picture, resume that wants access to your web server?
I would say probably not. Probably not. There's a lot of files that have malicious content in them. You don't want to blindly accept every file into your web server, into your web application, right? So, this could mean that a lot of malware could be entering and getting access into your network via these file uploads. So, I mean, if you look at some statistics, 63% of affected assets were data breaches. 40% of all malware was embedded in malicious files. So, looking at that kind of data, it's not recommended that you just blindly accept file uploads. And this is another reason that you need the right security features and products in place.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, once a company has been breached, nobody forgets those breaches or the bad reputation that goes along with it. And I can think of a few breaches that off the top of my head of just last year, but I have John here who's an expert and who's more up to date with some of this stuff. So I'll let him cover the next slide.
So breaches, we all know about data breaches, right? And a few that we'll cover from 2019 specifically, just to kind of bring these back into the memory of everybody. Back in the summer of 2019, there was the Capital One breach. And like 100 million accounts were compromised, which is, I don't know, it's mind blowing, right? Capital One, 100 million accounts. But then a few months later, there was an example in the city of Baltimore. They were hit with a ransomware attack. And that was about $6 million, as you can see there on the screen, that they ended up paying for that. We could even look back a little further and look at examples like Starwood Hotels, got hacked, Facebook political ads, and then I think we all remember the Equifax attack, where just absolutely tons and tons of data was compromised.
Yeah, and one thing that we know for sure is that all the companies that have been hacked have learned a very important lesson.
Yeah, that's true. So, I would say that overcompensating in application security is a better alternative than the cost and maybe even the shame in some cases of a data breach.
Yeah, it's very true. Okay, so John, what would you say are some of the things that web application providers have to be on the lookout for when it comes to safeguarding their web application from breaches or malware injections?
Well, you need to be looking at malicious users who are uploading malware, obviously, and then also the negligent users that upload sensitive information, just like we talked about at the beginning of this.
Yeah, that's right.
So yeah, and then last, there's the worst case scenario where your website becomes the source of distribution for this malware. So now you're being used by the attackers, by these malicious actors, as the source of the of the malware distribution, and that's not a good place to be, right?
Right. I mean, every single one of those scenarios sounds like it would be disastrous in their own way.
Right.
Okay. So the good thing is that we're here to talk about 3 things that you can do to safeguard your web application from malicious and negligent users, and that is you can perform file scanning and file sanitization on files that are coming inbound to your web servers. You should also have maybe like a data loss prevention tool for information going outbound to protect security. And finally, this solution that you architect should be manageable to change. You should be able to quickly adjust downsizing and upsizing. And we'll dive into these solutions next.
So Laura, really quick, maybe we should back up and talk for a second about how it is that malicious files or the sensitive information ends up infecting a web application.
Okay, yeah, a really good point, John. I'll let you handle this next slide.
Okay, so we'll talk through this really quick. So file-borne malware, as it were. So this is malware, these are files that have malware in them. This is a primrose path, if you will, a much used path for cyber attackers that want to compromise a company through their website. So this is especially true if a website allows file uploads, which lots of them do today, right? So if you don't have the proper protection, then this file upload feature that you have available on your web application, this provides like an open doorway, if you will, into the network. And it's connected into all the different parts of the network. You think about like the human body. Once you get into one little part, then now you're in the whole bloodstream, right? So it's not a good thing. You need to protect all that. So that's why F5 started our integration with OPSWAT several years ago. It's to prevent this risky content and documents from entering or leaving the organization. So it's kind of a two-way street. You don't want them to come in, but you also don't want them to, you don't want to be the source like we talked about. You don't want them to go out. And so we found that the most secure way to allow for these file uploads to enter the organization efficiently, securely, all of that is through this integration with OPSWAT. And so this solution involves an integration into antivirus engine providers. It's similar to how email servers scan their files for malware. And the solution that we use specifically to connect the Big IP products to the OPSWAT products is via a protocol called ICAP. And so, Laura, since you're the world leading expert on ICAP, right? That's what I hear. Then I'm going to let you describe what ICAP means and how it works.
Sure thing. So ICAP stands for Internet Content Adaptation Protocol, and it's really just a lightweight HTTP-based protocol. And it's designed to offload specific content to dedicated servers, and thereby it frees up resources, and it also standardizes the way in which new features are added on or implemented. And really, ICAP just allows clients to pass HTTP-based messages to ICAP servers. So ultimately, ICAP is just a communication protocol used by proxies to send information back and forth.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's kind of what it says. It's there to adapt the content of this internet request. So yeah, fantastic. So the cool thing is that the Big IP appliances from F5, things like our advanced WAF or LTM, the local traffic manager, ASM, or even our SSL orchestrator, have this ICAP capability for antivirus protection to be able to connect into the OPSWAT appliances. So the way that this works is a file is going to come into the Big IP via the client request ultimately the web server. So it's going to hit the Big IP first, right? So that's via the HTTP or HTTPS request, and then the F5 the Big IP is going to be able to extract the file from that payload and send it via the ICAP request down to the OPSWAT MetaDefender or the OPSWAT products. And then that's where it can be scanned with all of these antivirus and other protective, devices. And then if the file tests negative for any kind of malware, then it passes back up to the F5, the Big IP, where it is then passed on to the web application. Obviously, the F5 appliance is going to do whatever else it does as well, right? The F5 can do a whole bunch of stuff. So the F5 can still do everything it does as well. But if the file tests positive for malware, so now if this file has malware in it, then there's a few options that the F5 can choose to do. So one, it can block the request, which kind of makes sense, right? It could also send the file into a quarantine place. It can forward on a modified version of the file. So think of it as like, hey, the malware part has been cleaned out, but the rest of it can go ahead and go. Or if, you know, in kind of an edge niche situation, maybe for some testing or whatever, you could allow the original file even to go ahead and pass. So there's a lot of different capabilities you can have here with this solution.
Yeah, it sounds like F5 has the ability to do a whole lot. And the only question here is, which of the AV providers would you choose to go with? And what happens when this AV provider that you do choose to go with fails to have complete coverage of the worldwide malware that exists, or could possibly contain a zero-day threat?
Well, Laura, so F5 partners with a lot of different vendors out there. And so from a customer perspective, F5 customer, obviously they could choose whichever one they feel is right for them, right?
Yeah, well, that's a very nice and political reply, John. But I'm going to advocate that they consider OPSWET products. And the reason for that is because OPSWET products are built to try to cover as much as the world known and unknown malware that exists. And they do this in a very think outside the box, which I'll explain to next. So before I begin this, John, let me ask you a quick question. So in a game where the objective is to prevent the opponent from scoring, would you rather have a single defender or 8?
Laura, I'm going to go with 8.
All right. What if I asked you to choose between 8 or 20?
Laura, I think you're making this too easy on me. I'm going to say 20 at that point, right?
And why is that?
Well, if the goal, like you said, if the goal is to prevent the opponent from scoring, if the goal is to defend, then the more defenders you have, you know, the safer it's going to be, right?
Right. And that's the whole idea behind OPSWET's multi-scanning tool. OPSWET has licensed packages of different AVs, different AV engines together legally in under one subscription. So if we look at the statistics that justify the multiple AV scanning, this chart represents the anti-malware detection rates for the top 10,000 malware samples that were uploaded onto our MetaDefender cloud. Now, what can you see by looking at this chart?
Well, so Laura, when I look at this, as we kind of move up and down the chart, then it looks like the detection rate increases as we move down the chart, actually. So at MD12, so like MetaDefender 12, then the detection rate is like 94%. So of those 10,000 malware samples you talked about, 94% of them were caught at that MD12 level. But then when you come down to MD20, so now you've got like 20 different antivirus engines scanning this thing, scanning these 10,000 malware samples, the detection rate reaches 99%. So by this data, it's pretty clear that the more engines you have looking at various malware, the more protection you're going to have. So, you know, it makes sense because you're leveraging, you know, diversity and strengths of different antivirus vendors. Not every antivirus vendor is created equally, right? They're not all going to be able to do the exact same thing. So that's why OPSWAT detection rate can get you all the way up to like a 99+% detection rate, which is really powerful.
Right, and no single AV can do that. I mean, like you said, there's differences in when a Russian AV catches a malware compared to, you know, one in South America. I mean, it's just so difficult to cover the whole world's malware that you really do need, you know, a cumulative sum of detection information to be able to really understand what's going on out there.
Yeah, and like we said, it's not technically a cumulative sum. You can't add, you know, this percent plus that percent because there's some overlap. But the net effect is that you reach that, you know, 99+% detection rate.
Exactly. So it's always advantageous to, you know, have more of these working together. Okay, so let's let's move on to the next topic, which is Deep CDR. So it's a topic that John and I are both very familiar with. We actually recorded a video a few months ago on this topic, but we'll revisit the topic just one more time, I guess. And it's a little more complicated, so if you do have any questions, you can always, go back to that video and learn a little bit more about it.
That's right, Laura. I think this audience is up to the task. They're ready to go. They can handle it.
Okay, so DeepCDR is content disarm and reconstruction. And as the name states, it works by deconstructing files into its fundamental components, and then removing any potential exploitable objects. Then it rebuilds them in a safe and fully functional way. So ultimately, DeepCDR just strips all content, all active content from the file, rendering them harmless.
Yeah, so I know CDR, the content disarm and reconstruction, it's a popular technique among companies that collaborate on projects online, where the solution is tailored to productivity documents, like, for example, Microsoft Word documents or any kind of the Microsoft Office suite, whether it's Word or Excel or PowerPoint, but even like PDF documents or even JPEG, all of that where people may be collaborating. It's good to know that you can disarm any kind of harmful stuff that's in that. So with all the work from home that's happening right now, for example, a lot of online collaboration, this tool is even more relevant today than it maybe ever has been.
Yeah, for sure. We are definitely, at my company, we're definitely dealing with tons of collaboration on these productivity documents. It's almost difficult keeping up with all the documents that we're collaborating on a daily basis. And the cool thing is that OPSWAT, we actually, what sets our CDR technology apart from others is that we have the ability to scan and sanitize over 85 different file types. And why we call it Deep CDR is because we're able to go inside of different archives, and even deep inside of different documents and extract and clean every single one of those.
Yeah, it's kind of like, I know you mentioned the video that you did a couple minutes ago, but in that video you used what I thought was a great analogy. It was the boiling water analogy, where you clean out all the bad stuff, right?
Yeah, that was a good analogy.
Yes, it sure was, Laura. It was a great analogy. So yeah, I mean, to kind of expand on that for a second, you boil water to get rid of all the microbes, all the bad stuff, right? And in that example, you don't necessarily have to do extensive research per se about all the different threats that you eliminate. You're just confident, that the malware is gone based on all the scanning that happens. So to the audience here that's watching today, I would encourage you, if you have not had a chance to see the video, I think we can put a link to it here at the end. Go check out that Lightboard lesson video that explains the CDR in a little more detail.
Thanks, John.
Yeah.
Hey, Laura, there's a question from an attendee. They're asking about the Deep CDR. Does this mean that it can edit in the file content, maybe change the data that might be legitimate?
That's an excellent question, Doug. So Deep CDR doesn't touch any of the actual content. So once you cleanse a file, it actually keeps everything exactly intact. And most users can't even tell the difference between a file that has been sanitized or not. But what it does do is that it will take things away like JavaScript, hidden text, hidden comments away from the file. So the file is fully functional, but it won't be exactly the same file, but the user won't be able to tell at the end of it. And that might be a problem for some corporations who don't want to alter files. But for the most part, we haven't seen any customers that have complained over the fact that the file has been changed at all. So.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, that's a great answer. Great answer. So on this slide, I know we're looking at Proactive DLP, but the first thing I got to highlight here, Laura, is please tell me that is you on that snowmobile jumping through the middle of the air.
John, I love snow sports, but snowmobile is not one of them.
Oh, it's such a fantastic thing to do. So
Yeah.
one day that'll be you, Laura.
One day. Yeah, I chose the image because I thought that it kind of fits the theme of negligent users or reckless users. And the thing is, when you're protecting against these users that are misusing your website, it's not as straightforward as protecting it from malicious users.
Yeah, that's totally true. Reckless users is, it's a different ball game. So a careless user or reckless user could be sending non-compliant files into your organization. Again, using these file upload features that we've been talking about. And so while the heart of the user, the intent of the user might not be to cause damage, they still cause damage. They still inadvertently end up costing your organization thousands or maybe even millions of dollars. from either, data breach, data leakage, or maybe failure to comply with the law. Things like GDPR in Europe is a good recent example. PCI compliance, HIPAA from a healthcare perspective. All of these things, the failure to comply with these laws could end up penalizing your organization for collecting personal information or leaking personal information. So it could be a bad day, right?
Right. And I do want to bring up that California actually, 2018, they just passed the CCPA, which is California's Consumer Privacy Act. And it's built really similar to the GDPR, but it's for us Californian residents. And I know for a fact that there are many other states that are following California's lead and are drafting similar policies of their own.
Yeah, that's totally true. So, I mean, the world is headed in that direction. And one of the unfortunate things about these, some of these acts, these laws, is that there's nothing inherently, the way that they're written out at least, there's nothing inherently that penalizes the user personally from sharing this information, but from within the organization. But the organization itself is going to be held accountable. So if you're the one leading the organization, you've got a reckless user. You as the boss, you as the company are going to be the one held accountable.
Right. And I feel like you really can't just reject all the valuable information that's coming into your web application. So how can you prevent some of this information from entering your portal while still upholding productivity?
So, well, Laura, one great example, one great technology is a data loss prevention tool. You could use that.
Right. And as the name states, a DLP tool, it will first identify a file type. It'll check for sensitive information and redact information if it finds a match. Now, OpSWAT has a DLP tool that is called Proactive DLP. And we can identify over 30 different file types and redact sensitive information, or we can add certain watermarks. We can also remove metadata. And And so Proactive DLP can be accessed through the Metadefender ICAP server from the F5 network appliance, just as the other technologies that we talked about, the Metascan and the Deep CDR. And with Proactive DLP, you can be confident that sensitive information will not leave or enter your network without your permission.
Yeah, so like you said, and when you collaborate, when these products collaborate together, F5 Big IP products, this Proactive DLP is going to prevent non-compliant data from either infiltrating your web servers or maybe preventing privacy lawsuits from ever happening. So it's a good solution.
Okay, and last and maybe most important thing that you have to do is you have to make sure that you implement a cybersecurity tool that is able to scale and easily adapt to changes.
Yeah, that's true. So if anyone's worked in networking, which I assume a lot of people have on this call, at least, this goes unsaid, the scalability. So this feature happens to be an advantage, good news, to both F5 and OpSWAT. So the scalability and easily adaptable technology is certainly there. So maybe why don't we take a quick look at these two products?
Sure thing. So here we see the internet on the left, and on the right we see web servers. And your F5 security stack is right here in the middle, protecting your web application. Down here, you'll see all the OpSWAT technologies, and these have been added to the F5 LTM in particular to check file content. Now, as we mentioned previously, the integration is possible due to ICAP, and ICAP is spoken by both the F5 Big IP appliances and the Metadefender ICAP server. And after the communications taking place, you can see Metadefender Core and Metadefender Central Management down here. Now, Metadefender Core, the platform consists of the CDR, the Metascan, the DLP, all those tools that we discussed earlier. And the way that it works is that the OpSWAT software can be mounted on your hardware of choice and in series with the F5 appliance to provide users with plenty of freedom when selecting deployment options. And the F5, in this scenario, we can see that the F5 Big IP LTM is being used to load balance various instances of the Metadefender ICAP server. So we could see 4 Metadefender ICAP servers that are being load balanced by F5 LTM.
That's exactly right, Laura. Exactly right. So yeah, I mean, we see the network flow. It uses the load balancing, like you mentioned, from the LTM and the MetaDefender ICAP. It optimizes network traffic, the secure file transfer features, all that stuff that you mentioned. So the file comes into the into the F5 appliance from the internet, just like you said, and then F5 is going to send it down to the ICAP server or via the ICAP protocol to the OpsWatt server. OpsWatt's going to reject or accept these files and then sanitize as needed. So I would say for large enterprises with high traffic loads, you need a heavily reliable system, and that's where you can optimize OpsWatt deployments by health monitoring, load balancing capabilities. That's where the scalability comes into play that we talked about. So along with the MetaDefender high performance architecture that you've shown here, this joint solution is used to protect against a lot of things like advanced persistent threats and a variety of different bad actors. And so the OpsWatt appliances comply. It compiles reports, I should say, from every MetaDefender core instance in the central management, the OpsWatt central management. So you can see that down there at the bottom of the diagram as well. And then that generates a processing or an activity history in these reports. So you can go back and look at logs and all that stuff. So you have a full visibility across everything that's happening in this entire solution and in your network.
Yeah, and it's important that both products are compatible when scaling, because a system that isn't properly sized will have performance issues, and these performance issues might lead to bypass and security issues, and then you have a whole lot of other problems, and you really don't want to become a honeypot for malware. So you want to make sure that you size your system correctly so that all your security features are in place.
Exactly. Like we said before, you don't want your organization to be the distribution point for malware. You don't want to be used like that. So that's you certainly want to avoid that.
Okay, and time for the final session of this webinar is the demo. So right before we start the demo, I quickly just want to reiterate what is happening using this basic solutions architecture diagram. So here on the left, we have clients, and on the right, we have the web application servers, and the clients are trying to submit a file to the web application servers. Now, let's pretend that in this example, we're looking at a bank on our right and users that are trying to submit a bank loan on our left. Now, this bank is a very smart bank, so it has cybersecurity features, cybersecurity products to protect their network, such as F5 and OpsWatt. And so here in the middle, we have an F5 LTM connected to a MetaDefender ICAP server. And just as a reminder, the MetaDefender ICAP server is just a communication tool to the MetaDefender core. Now, when a client uploads a file, the request will go through the F5 LTM, which will then direct the traffic to the MetaDefender ICAP server, and consequently the MetaDefender core for scanning. And based on the scan result, the file will either be allowed or rejected. Now, if the file is clear of threats, then F5 can send the original file into the web application. However, based on the configuration settings, the file can also be sanitized by OpsWatt's Deep CDR. In this case, F5 will send a modified version of that file to be delivered to the final destination. If the file is malicious, then MetaDefender will reject the file, and it will show a custom HTML message stating that the file is blocked and the content would never reach the final destination. Okay. So here we're going to demo how the MetaDefender works in the network that we just saw. So first we'll demo the Deep CDR, and then we'll demo the multi-scanning. Okay, so let's get started. So let's pretend that this is the bank application loan that you're going to try to upload onto your bank, onto the web servers of your bank. Now, for the most part, this the application looks safe. However, there are actually a number of exploitables hidden within the hyperlinks and the macros of this file. So in this simple work doc, we can see that there is a hyperlink in here. We can see that there's an embedded object, there's a macro, and if we scroll down, there's also a recursive file. And just a reminder, all of these can be embedded with malicious content. Now, what we're going to try to do is we're going to try to upload this file to our web server. So first, we'll just browse for the file, and we'll click Submit to Upload. So we can see that the file has been successfully uploaded because no malicious content was detected. And this could potentially cause a problem if the original file had a zero-day exploit, which bypassed the AV security features. But since this bank has OPSWAT's deep CDR, the file has been cleansed. And we can see that because the name here states that it's a sanitized version of the original file. Furthermore, if we go into the sanitized file, we can actually see that the hyperlink, the embedded object, the macro, and the recursive file have been removed. Okay, now let's go to the ICAP server history report to see a summary of the scan. So here we can see the scan start time, the client's address that sent the request, the proxy address, which is the F5 external VLAN address, the sanitization status, and the duration of the scan. Now, furthermore, if we wanted more information, we can click this right here that says View Details, and this will direct us to Metadefender Core, which will show us all of the engines that participated in the file scan-in. And to see what actually has been sanitized, we can go furthermore, we can go into the Deep CDR Details tab. And here we can see that what has been sanitized, specifically the hyperlink, the embedded objects such as the LLE, and any other potential threat factors within this docx file have been removed. And this ensures that the file is completely safe after processing. So for the next example, let's see what happens when we try to upload an infected file to the web application server. So here we'll upload an ICAR file and we'll hit Submit. Now we can see that the file has been blocked from reaching the web application. And the reason is that it states as that the file has ICAR, it's a virus ICAR test file. And if we go into our ICAP history report, we'll see that as expected, that the file is blocked, and it's blocked because it's been infected. And we can see that multiple AVs are at work right here. So we can see all the AVs that have selected this file as malicious, and we can see actually that every single one of these has detected the file as a threat. And it's just good to know that every single file that passes through your workflow will undergo the same rigorous scanning, ensuring that all traffic entering your web application is safe. Okay, and that concludes the demo portion. Now, if we have some time, we can maybe answer a few questions. But before we close, I do want to say that John and I have tried to give you guys a lighthearted look at web application security, but this is actually a very, very serious topic.
Yeah, it absolutely is. Which, by the way, great demo there, Laura. It's good to actually see all that stuff in action. But if users are given the opportunity, then they are going to misuse your web application, right? Whether it's unintentionally or intentionally, but it's going to cause harm to your organization. So, limiting the functionality is not a solution per se in today's collaborative world. Like you said, a lot of people are collaborating online. So just to tell people, hey, you can't do any of that, that's not good. So what you need to do is your critical web applications, you need to build in the protection that we've talked about here today. So don't stop people from working, just protect them while they work, right?
Exactly. And here at OPSWAT, our products are made to cover, as we mentioned previously, the entire malware intelligence field, including threats that have never been before seen and file vulnerabilities which have not yet surfaced. F5 users have been pairing OPSWAT cybersecurity features into their existing infrastructure for over a decade now, and this ensures trust in every single joint integration and a wide range of customer support. So in conclusion, pair the most powerful and reliable network appliances from F5 with the market-leading file detection and file sanitization solutions from OPSWAT to secure your web applications, ultimately the online face of your organization.
So we have a few questions, and looks like everybody has stayed online. a majority of people anyway. So I'll just go ahead and go through 3 questions, which should cover the next couple of minutes. That's okay with you, Laura and John?
Sure.
So the first question is, a function of SSL decryptor is listed. Does this capability apply only to the established socket, or can it also analyze encrypted payloads?
That's a great question. So one of the functionalities of the SSLO is the fact that it's able to decrypt and encrypt traffic within its system. And so one of the reasons why people are using the SSLO is to get rid of this daisy chain effect where you're having multiple encryption and decryption processes along the way. So the SSLO is actually able to de-encrypt encrypted traffic, send that information to OPSWOT for file scanning. OPSWOT will identify the file as malicious or not, send the information back to the SSLO, and the SSLO will re-encrypt the traffic. So that's kind of one of the features that the SSLO is providing you with. So yes.
Yeah, great point. I would just add that, obviously something's going to need to decrypt the payload in order for all this scanning and all that to happen. But like Laura said, SSLO is a great example of that. Other things, even like the LTM with some of the SSL profiles on the client or server side, can do SSL offloading, and so decrypt the traffic before it sends it down to the OPSWOT services. So yeah, it's a great question.
Great. Thanks for addressing the LTM. That was the other question. So the last question is, does this have sandboxing functionality behind it?
For this use case, when we're talking about file uploads into web applications, time is of essence. So when you have clients that are uploading files, you really want to make sure that you have really high performance features. So what OPSWOT tries to do is we try to optimize your scanning time. And I know that, for example, we're able to scan most files within under a second. So when you talk about the sandboxing feature, well, that's a feature that just inherently takes more time. So we actually do have a sandbox feature that we are offering. However, we don't see it being very applicable to this use case. Now, if, for example, you do have a file that is very critical that you really want to get into your network, and you do want to run a line to our sandbox feature, you can do that, but you have to understand the fact that the sandbox is going to take quite a bit of time, and that's not necessarily a solution that you want to have in place for your users that are trying to access your web application. So
yeah, it's more of a testing or trying to offload those malicious files on the sandboxing is not part of your normal every single user gets placed into that kind of an idea.
Right.
So yeah, and then also really quick, I can see the Q&A here, Doug. If I could go back to Mohammed's question about LTM or ASM, great question, Mohammed. I would say that probably most people interact with LTM just by the nature of how the traffic comes in to Big IP. They've got LTM in place, and then you can send it from LTM, the traffic from LTM down to OPSWOT, and then back up just like we talked about here today. Certainly, if you have ASM enabled as well. Or maybe you only have ASM enabled, then that capability is still there. The ICAP functionality is still there. So I hate to say, hey, it totally depends on your use case or your company's situation, but probably most of the time it would be an LTM connection with OPSWOT. So anyway. All
right. Well, that takes us to the 45-minute mark. There are quite a few questions, and as I mentioned, we will reply to your questions by email. And I want to thank Laura and John for your time, and thank you everybody else for joining us. Hope to see you at our next webinar.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Great to see you.